When you think of NBA legends, one name stands above almost everyone else. Literally, Shaquille O'Neal. A giant on the court, a showman off it, and a personality so massive that even after retiring more than a decade ago, he still dominates headlines. But behind the commercials, the TNT jokes, and the goofy Shaq memes, there are stories about him that even his biggest fans don't know. For example, how did he blow through his first $1 million in under an hour? How did a man who crushed rims for a living end up wearing a sheriff's badge? And why does Shaq keep a collection of broken backboards in his backyard like trophies? Stick around, because this is the untold side of Shaq Diesel, and it might just change the way you see him forever. The first million disaster. When Shaq was drafted #1 overall in 1992, he signed a rookie contract worth $3 million a year. For a kid who grew up without much, it was overwhelming. He was barely 20 years old, with more money than he had ever dreamed of. So when that first $1 million hit his bank account, Shaq did what most young athletes dream about. He went shopping. First stop, a Mercedes dealership. He dropped $150,000 on a fully loaded black Benz with custom rims, grinning ear to ear as he drove it home. But his stepfather took one look at the car and asked the question no kid wants to hear: "Where's mine?" So Shaq went back and bought another one. Then his mom wanted one too. Add in some designer clothes, electronics, jewelry, and gifts for friends, and within 24 hours, Shaq had burned through nearly half his rookie salary. By the end of the day, he was already $80,000 in debt. When the bank called to warn him, reality hit hard. Shaq realized if he kept living like this, his money would disappear before his career even took off. That wake-up call forced him to change. He got serious about managing money, hired financial advisors, and started saving and investing instead of blowing cash. That decision paid off massively. Today, Shaq earns more in retirement than he ever did playing ball. The rapper that made it. In the 1990s, being an NBA star and trying to rap was almost a cliche. Players wanted to cross over into hip-hop, but most of them flopped. Allen Iverson's album never even got released because of controversy. Chris Webber tried and failed. Even Kobe dipped his toe in before pulling back to protect his image. But Shaq actually made it. His first album, Shaq Diesel, went platinum in 1993, selling over 1 million copies. Songs like What's Up Doc, with the Fu-Schnickens, and I Know I Got Skills hit the Billboard Hot 100. His second album, Shaq Fu: The Return, went gold. By the time he was done, Shaq had sold more than 2 million records. Hip-hop legends gave him respect because he didn't treat it like a gimmick. He genuinely loved the craft. The only downside was the business side. Despite selling millions of albums, Shaq made less than $100,000 from it, thanks to how record labels carved up profits. Still, the music wasn't about money. It was about proving he could succeed anywhere he set his mind. And while the rap game gave him credibility, there was one part of basketball that never gave Shaq any respect at all. Shaq was unstoppable in the paint. He bullied defenders, dunked over everyone, and put up huge numbers. But when it came to shooting, that was his weakness. He was a famously bad free throw shooter, barely making just over half his attempts. Fans even created the hack-a-Shaq strategy, intentionally fouling him because they knew he'd miss from the line. And from three-point range, forget it. In his entire NBA career, Shaq attempted 22 three-pointers. He only made one. That one lucky shot came during his final season with the Orlando Magic, a desperate half-court heave that somehow went in. It became his only career make from deep. Shaq himself jokes about it, but here's the irony. His favorite player today is Steph Curry, the smallest guy on the court, draining threes from everywhere. Shaq admires him because Curry is fearless despite his size, and because he's the best shooter in history. But Shaq never needed jump shots, because when he went inside, the NBA literally had to change its rules. When people talk about athletes turned businessmen, names like Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson always come up. But Shaq belongs in that same conversation, and in some ways, he's even more aggressive. He's been an early investor in giants like Google and Apple. He bought into Krispy Kreme donuts and Papa John's Pizza. He's launched or partnered with over 200 different businesses, from gyms and car washes to nightclubs and restaurants. He even owns a minority stake in the Sacramento Kings, an ironic twist, since he once mocked them as the Sacramento Queens during his Lakers days. But here's what sets Shaq apart. He's not just a businessman, he's a marketer. Shaq has a nose for brands, and he attaches himself to product in ways that stick. Icy Hot, the General Insurance, Gold Bond, Pepsi, countless food chains, you name it, Shaq's face has probably been on the commercial. He once said, "I've never seen a commercial I didn't like." And based on how many he's done, he wasn't joking. These endorsements, plus his investments, now earn him tens of millions every single year, more than his playing salary ever did. By being smart with money and saving 75% of his career income, Shaq turned himself into not just a retired athlete, but a mogul. But Shaq wasn't only cashing checks. He was chasing something most people laughed at. Two of his uncles were police officers, and as a kid, he idolized them. He wanted the uniform, the respect, the authority, and the chance to serve. Of course, the world had other plans. By the time he was a teenager, he was already 7 feet tall with size 22 shoes. Coaches saw him as the future of basketball, not law enforcement. But Shaq never let that childhood dream die. After retiring from the NBA, while most former players were chasing coaching jobs or media gigs, Shaq quietly started training to become a cop. He passed the requirements and officially became a deputy sheriff in both Georgia and Florida. Today, he splits time between Atlanta, where he works on TNT's Inside the NBA, and Orlando, where he owns a jaw-dropping 70,000 square foot mansion. And if you've ever seen the Adam Sandler comedy Grown Ups 2, you've already gotten a taste of what Shaq looks like in uniform. He played a goofy police officer on screen, but in real life, he's serious about it. So serious that he's publicly announced plans to run for sheriff once his TNT career ends. Just imagine getting pulled over for speeding only to see Shaquille O'Neal step out of the squad car. That's not just intimidating, that's nightmare fuel for anyone behind the wheel. But behind the badge and the smile, there was a much darker story about the man who brought Shaq into this world. One of the hardest truths is that his biological father, Joseph Tony, was never there for him. When Shaq was still a baby, Tony was arrested on drug-related charges and sent to prison. By the time he got out, Shaq was already showing signs of becoming a basketball phenom. Instead of trying to reconnect, Tony chose to stay away. That left the job of raising Shaq to his stepfather, Army Sergeant Philip Harrison. Harrison was tough but steady, the kind of man who set discipline and structure in Shaq's life. Shaq always called him Dad, and even paid tribute to him with the song Biological Didn't Bother on his second rap album. The title said it all. It was a message to the father who left, and a thank you to the man who stayed. For years, Shaq said he didn't care if he ever met his real father. He even brushed off interview questions about it, but deep down, it weighed on him. Decades later, in 2016, that story finally came full circle. At 44 years old, Shaq walked into a restaurant, only to discover that Joseph Tony lived in the apartment right upstairs. The two finally came face to face. There was no shouting, no bitterness. Instead, Shaq extended his hand, and they reconciled. He forgave his father on the spot, saying he didn't judge him for the past. Since then, they've stayed lightly in touch, talking on the phone, and even letting Tony meet his grandchildren. That reunion came late in Shaq's life, but by then, he had already built something incredible and lost a lot along the way. There's always debate about who was the most dominant big man in NBA history. Wilt Chamberlain had the numbers, Kareem had the skyhook, but Shaq had something neither of them could match: sheer physical destruction. When Shaq dunked, he didn't just score, he sent a message. He wanted to embarrass his opponent, rip the rim down, and make sure the crowd felt the force. And sometimes that force was too much. In his rookie season, Shaq shattered 2 backboards completely, sending glass everywhere. The league quickly realized their equipment wasn't built for him. They had to redesign backboards, rims, and stanchions just to survive the Shaq attack. By the time his career was over, Shaq had destroyed 19 rims. At his home, he keeps them planted like trees in the backyard, a bizarre but fitting trophy case. And while he was tearing down backboards, Shaq was also building something else, an identity no one expected. Shaq's nicknames are legendary: Superman, the Diesel, the Big Aristotle, the Big Cactus, the Big Shamrock. But out of all the names, there's one he loves the most: Dr. O'Neal. In 2012, after years of juggling TV work and business deals, Shaq earned his doctorate in education from Barry University in Miami. He completed most of the coursework online, proving he wasn't just muscle, he had brains too. His doctoral dissertation focused on how CEOs and leaders use humor in the workplace. Fitting, considering Shaq's entire second career has revolved around humor, whether it's pranking Charles Barkley on TNT or making himself the punchline in commercials. For Shaq, education was about more than a title. It was about showing his kids, his fans, and even himself that you can always push for more. In the mid-90s, Shaq's star power was so massive that Hollywood came knocking. He landed a role in the basketball movie Blue Chips, playing a freakishly talented recruit named Neon Budo. On set, Shaq met another young actor with incredible handles, Anthony Penny Hardaway. At first, Shaq thought Penny was just an actor, but after watching him play, he realized Penny was the real deal. The two became friends during filming, and Shaq couldn't get the idea out of his head. This guy would be perfect as his backcourt partner in Orlando. When the 1993 draft came, Shaq lobbied hard for the Magic to pick Penny. On draft night, the team made the move, trading Chris Webber for Hardaway. The duo clicked instantly. Their chemistry took the Magic all the way to the 1995 NBA Finals, creating one of the most exciting young teams of the decade. And it all started because of a Hollywood movie. Shaquille O'Neal quietly built one of the biggest sneaker empires ever, selling over 400 million pairs and generating more than $4 billion in revenue. And the wild part? His shoes didn't come from luxury brands or exclusive drops. They came from Walmart. Back in the 90s, Shaq signed a $40 million deal with Reebok. His signature sneakers were marketed as premium, costing up to $300 a pair. But one moment changed everything. After a game, a woman confronted him outside the arena. She accused him of charging families way too much. Shaq offered her cash, but she pushed it back and said, "Why don't you make affordable shoes?" That hit him harder than any defender. Kids idolized him, but most couldn't afford his sneakers, so Shaq did the unthinkable. He cut ties with Reebok, walked away from millions, and made his own move. He went to Walmart and launched sneakers priced between $19 and $29, available everywhere. Critics mocked him. Sneakerheads dismissed them as cheap, but Shaq didn't care. He wasn't chasing hype culture. He wanted kids and families to actually wear his shoes. The result? An explosion in sales. Hundreds of millions of pairs flew off shelves, racking up billions in revenue. While other athletes built fortunes selling exclusivity, Shaq built his by doing the opposite, making sneakers accessible. He may have sacrificed premium endorsements, but what he gained was respect. Parents loved him for it. Kids could finally wear his shoes, and his brand became a symbol of staying real. Even now, Shaq says he doesn't care if sneaker culture ignores him. His mission was never about hype. It was about families who couldn't afford luxury sneakers. And in the end, that decision might be more legendary than his basketball career. Because while most athletes chase status, Shaq chose accessibility and turned it into billions. From a 7-foot kid dreaming of being a cop to a global icon breaking backboards and platinum records, Shaq has lived more lives than most people could imagine. He's been a sheriff, a rapper, a movie star, an investor, a comedian, and even a doctor. So here's the question. What surprised you most about Shaq? The cop dream? The $1 million mistake? Or the fact that he's Dr. O'Neal? Drop your answer in the comments, because one thing's for sure, the Shaq story isn't finished yet.